welcome to CHGO Red Stars Podcast. Podcast that does help you stay on side with the Chicago Red Stars. I'm going to bring that back.
Nice.
CHGO Red Stars is brought to you by Points Bet. Use promo code CHGO when you sign up to get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. I'm Sandra Herrera, joining you remotely with my friend, homie, and colleague, Clara Watkins, aka the Scam Originator. How you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. Glad to have you back. We missed you last week.
Listen, I missed you and the entire city of Chicago that we call home.
Yeah, you were out.
Yes, in Las Vegas for a conference. Shout out to NABJ and NAHJ. Very cool. Learned some things, met some people. It was very nice. But there's no place like home and there's no place like family. So it's good to be back with you, chatting all things Chicago Red Stars. And it was hell getting home, quite frankly.
Yeah.
All those like delays that like we saw over that weekend that it like obviously impacted my flight. So it just took like even longer for me to come home. So I was just like, God, I'm going to just be stuck in a city in the desert and just never be able to come home. But that was untrue. That was just my panic in my brain, and eventually came home. And it was nice. I will say this. It was nice to be comforted in a strange airport in a city in the desert by some Chicago Red Stars soccer.
I was gonna say this. You would have been traveling like right around when the game was being played, right?
And the universe said, "Oh no!
Yeah,
you stay put. You stay right there.
You watch that game.
You watch that game.
Yeah,
and I did, and it was delightful, quite frankly. And we'll chat a bit about it. But I just again want to remind folks that CHGO Red Stars is presented by PointsBet. One of the best ways you could do to support CHGO is to download the PointsBet app and use code CHGO when you sign up. And if you do that right now, you'll get 2 risk-free bets up to $2,000. But that's not it. If you make a $50 or more first-time deposit, you'll receive a free CHGO membership, which unlocks all of our web content, and you'll even get a free t-shirt of your choice from CHGO Locker. That's $2,000 in free bets, a free CHGO membership, and a free t-shirt from the CHGO Locker, all for making more than a $50 first-time bet at PointsBet. If you have any questions, you can email pointsbet@allchgo.com and we'll help you out. You can also download the PointsBet app right now and use the promo code CHGO. So what are you waiting for? Time to elevate your betting game. And if you or someone you know has a gambling problem wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER for crisis counseling and referral services. I feel like I've memorized those types of numbers, again, coming back home from Vegas.
That's right, from Vegas. Yeah, I'm sure they're everywhere.
A lot of information about that in case, in case you need some help about it. But we previewed, this game was previewed ahead of playing it, and it was really cool to sort of see that our other friend, homie, and colleague, Theo, came through and I talked about some Chicago Red Stars things, some Gotham FC things with you. But even before that, you and I chatting off mic a little bit, we absolutely had the perspective of, look, this is one of those games where the Chicago Red Stars need to just go out there and simply win it.
Yeah, I mean, that was the energy going back to the San Diego game, right? You know, San Diego was a very evenly contested match. Really should have gotten at least a point out of it. You don't. It's disappointing. No goals in Soldier Field, blah, 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 blah. But then you just turn and you go say, okay, so win Gotham, right? And so you hate to see it, genuinely, and nobody likes it when it turns into this for a particular team. But we are at the point of the season where you've got like your tough ones, and then you've got your this team's struggling, and we kind of strike when a team's struggling. And that is what the Gotham game was kind of projected to be, and was very much what it ended up being. Because you also don't know, when you have a team that's struggling like that, you never know, especially in the NWSL, if that makes them actually more dangerous, right? If they come out with a renewed sense of energy, or they try to shake up the starting 11, or they change tactics. You never know exactly. But in retrospect, as we all saw, this was, and genuinely, hopefully for Gotham, this was the end of an arc that cannot continue. But obviously Chicago very much benefited from that. And Chicago was ready to go too. They came out. Well, the first 15 minutes were a little bit rough, but then after the first 15 minutes, they pulled it together and did a nice job. Yeah.
I'm not going to front, man. I did have like that thought. I won't call it a worry, but the thought did cross my mind in sort of us again chatting about it, about the team and stuff like off mic, and being like, yeah, like this is a game where they need to go out, just get it, just take it, just snatch those 3 points, get them. But there have been moments, and I won't say like necessarily this version of the Chicago Red Stars, the 2022 version, but there have been moments in the past where we've seen a Chicago Red Stars team, be equally successful on the pitch, be in a certain place in the table, amongst the standings, and maybe go out against one of those bottom half of the table teams and drop the bag, man. And maybe a little bit of a combination of not starting off on the right foot, and mixed with perhaps, kind of bringing down their play, playing to the level of the other team, perhaps, maybe mentally, checking out because of like that sort of thing where it's like, oh yeah, they're just like a bottom half table team. We should just go ahead and handle business. And then it just doesn't turn out that way. And we saw it specifically in 2019 against games like, Orlando Pride side, or at the time, a Sky Blue team, so those were losses that, could have maybe changed around their record a little bit. And we could be talking about a 2019 Shield winning team versus a 2019 kind of question mark team, right? So it's like you look at these matches and you're like, you want to see this team go out and get it. So yes, I'm with you in that kind of opening 15 minutes. I was like, oh no, is this going to be like another one of those things where it's like they just managed to sort of get a result versus getting the win? But thankfully, that was not the case. They end up getting the dub in this one. But I think after that first 15 minutes or so, I think we started to see, the runs coming from Malpew. I liked what we saw, from Luber a little bit, quite frankly, sort of seeing her on the ball, getting on the ball a little bit more. But I did have a moment or a thought or two where I was like, are they going to like eventually play themselves into this game?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little bit slow to start. I mean, Chris Petroselli said after the match that he felt like there was a little bit of a hangover from the San Diego game. That might have not even just affected the Red Stars. San Diego looked a little bit flat in the first half of their match this last weekend as well. To come down, I mean, I do think that San Diego game was played in front of probably 8,000 or 9,000 people. And I think to come down from something like that, have that kind of experience, I know it was very emotional with Alyssa Mott's leaving. I think it was just kind of a big sort of draining week. So, good for them probably that they didn't have to go on the road after that game. So I think it being a home game was helpful. But yeah, I think Gotham pushed early. It was just very disjointed, both teams. To be frank, it looked like it was going to be kind of a crummy game rather than being worried that Chicago wasn't going to get a result. It was more just like, is this going to be 90 minutes of just kind of like running around? It was also desperately humid, right? It was like 80 to 85% humidity. It was fortunately not sunny, so at least you didn't have the extra heat baked in, but they were swimming out there, and almost like we had multiple like stud changes, like cleat changes in the first half.
Yeah, there was a turf monster.
As we know, the field on SeatGeek Stadium is watered to the point of it's truly wet. Truly wet, especially if the air is that heavy. They were having a lot of trouble with that too. So I think that there was an element of disconnect, not just mentally, but just the physical conditions, I think, were making an issue. Like Michelle Beto sat down and said, change my shoes. And
don't deal with this anymore.
Yeah, right. After she almost gave up like a horrible sequence because she tripped. And so it was kind of a weird first part of the game. And this was true throughout, which is that Gotham, even at that point, was not presenting a ton up top. There were a couple heat checks, like from distance, that Nair had to do the full extension just to make sure it was going over the bar, but they did not finish the match with a shot on goal. And so that was even true for the first 20. It was like, you're just like, okay, they're feeling things out. This feels a little cautious. And then Chicago just started completely dominating the game. And then at that point, you're like, okay, but will they score?
Yeah, that's no, that's the other thing, right? Again, talking about like I guess that's what I was alluding to, where I was just like, well, they eventually did sort of play themselves into it, and talking about specifically about, watching Malpio on the ball and these runs that she constantly makes, right? With the Red Stars and against oppositions. I think maybe that's important to talk about the timing of the goal, right? And which it happening right in stoppage time of that first half, and sort of giving them that kind of narrow lead, but still a lead nonetheless, like going into halftime. But we're also sort of watching it kind of come from this long ball kind of over the top to Milazzo, essentially, who ended up getting a hit on it. Nice to see Milazzo get that in the back of the net.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is indicative of the whole match in many ways, which is that, and again, like, if you want to accurately depict what was happening, and it's hard to do that without being disrespectful, to, quite frankly, to Gotham, because I don't think actually Chicago was playing with a ton of defensive respect to Gotham. They started pushing like further and further up. They were getting set pieces, which meant that they were sending defenders up. You look at the place on the field where the defense ends up. They're right at the halfway line for much of it. And so that meant that, on these dead ball situations, you push your defenders forward, and they were not super concerned with being hit on the counter. And that kind of played out. They did have a couple moments. Where Midge Purse was trying to hit them and trying to switch the game and push things in the other direction. But I think, and again, like, you just don't see this in the NWSL that much, but being there in person, it felt a little bit like, and this is not an estimation of talent level between the two teams, just the way that they were playing. I felt like I was watching the US try to unlock a bunker. And so
nice.
It just was that creativity, like Gotham was sort of giving up the counterattack and asking questions of Chicago of basically just like, how are you going to score? Sarah Lubert was playing offense. She was not playing defense, right?
Yeah.
And so she was trying to sort of expose things on the left side. You had Yuki, who was pushed as far forward as I think she's been all season, trying to get into the attack. You had BSG trying to receive service on the right, and then you had Pugh kind of drifting. And so the number one task in that first half was not how do we attack and defend in transition. It was how do we unlock 6, 7, 8 players sitting in front of us, between us and the goal. And ultimately, as we know, what can shake that stuff up also with the US is set pieces. And so really nicely recycled ball back in by Danny Colaprico. Really nice header from Tatumn Milazzo, arcing. I mean, Betos was at full extension and couldn't get it. So that really changed the tenor of the first half, because they were about to go into halftime scoreless. And that, I think, would have been disappointing for the Red Stars with how they were dominating everything. I
think like the body language too, like kind of from the team after that goal. I don't want to say it was relief, but it definitely was like, fuck yes, kind of.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hey, you love to see,
especially because they've just been struggling to score over the last couple of weeks,
and you don't want to call it like a slump or anything, but there was a 2-game skid here for this team, technically, despite the good play in between the lines that we saw out of that San Diego game,
right?
Specifically, it's still an L, right? Like in terms of the standings and stuff like that, and you're coming in on another homestead essentially, and you want to get that dub, you know what I mean? And so in terms of especially playing at SeatGeek, where they do have a really good record, it took playing at Soldier Field to kind of snap the home record, I guess.
I know. We're gonna change that. We're gonna change that stat. We're gonna be like unbeaten at SeatGeek Stadium.
Right. Exactly, so like this, and like it's like it kind of feels like refreshing in that sense, right? So I did like the who doesn't love a good like raged out Sully, you know what I mean? So but I was like looking at that like in this airport by myself, like trying not to look too nutso myself, kind of watching the game. But I felt that, quite frankly, even at the airport, I was like, oh yes, like that's good for the team going in to halftime, because I mean, if anything, if you go in scoreless, like all at zeros at the half, if anything, that's probably encouraging for a very struggling Gotham FC side at this point.
Right. It makes them feel, because I know that tactically, they were set up to try not to concede, which is why the game essentially ended when Chicago did score. But they Yeah, and it was, it was mostly working, right? It was forcing questions of Chicago that they don't always have to answer because maybe you
Yeah.
get Pew on the break, maybe you
Yeah.
you get something else going. And so I think that the fact that I do think that it had to also just feel like um the process working in a really positive way of just being like, yes, we are playing better than this other team and we are getting a goal out of it. Because I think if Gotham had made it, 60 minutes or something without scoring, then both teams get frustrated, as opposed to the Red Stars getting to have a little bit more fun in the second
Yeah.
half, trying to get the next one. Because again, they were not really playing like they were that worried about Gotham progressing the ball, because Gotham had a terrible time doing it,
Yeah, which they were not. Yeah, so
Right.
I mean, 1-0 at the halftime, and it definitely felt like maybe we probably wouldn't see like immediate changes to the lineup coming out of the half, because again the team was playing well, and at this point now they've got the goal on their side,
Right.
to sort of allow this 11 to kind of maybe go out there and still kind of build on that a little bit. And maybe this is a good time now that we're like jumping into the second half to sort of bring up all the different type of maps.
Yeah,
Maybe we want to go with passing map
Yeah,
first.
let's do the pass map. I mean,
But,
the piece that I wrote this week is about some of the passing structures, and I was really actually praising the team in that you look at even the two losses versus this win, the passing structures don't change that much. Their formation is really, really solid. Their spacing is incredibly consistent. It's just a matter of like, did you make individual mistakes and were you able to unlock the other team? And so obviously Gotham has some big issues here, right?
I'm sorry, it just looks like a frowny face, kind of like with Gotham's pass.
It was described to me once as it's like there are those photos of like they give different drugs to spiders, and and like some of them are like really magnificent, like the spider on acid is just like creating these amazing intricate things, and then this is like the spider on caffeine. This is the spider on caffeine from Gotham, unfortunately, in this game. But no, Chicago, you look how advanced Chicago is. Look at the space between Zoe Morris and Alyssa Nair. Just Sarah Lubert, look how far forward she was. She was the second most advanced player on the entire team. She's theoretically playing an outside back-ish role. It just, again, like I said, it was just kind of disrespectful, but like in the way that you want a confident team to be playing. So pretty wild stuff, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one thing where it's like, I love when we do this, because there's definitely like the moment in which we're watching the games, right? And we're just doing our thing. We're just taking it with our eyes and our brains, and then being able to kind of, have access to this type of cool data. So again, shout out to Ariel as always, putting it together.
Yes. Clutch.
Being able to sort of maybe match that with like what we're seeing with our eyes, and that's not some new take at this point in the season, in terms of, hey, Gotham is struggling and they're borderline a not good team this year. Like, that's not a hot take by any means at this point, where there's like 6, 7, 8, 9 games remaining in the season, depending on the club you are. But it's still maybe a little bit jarring, like when you actually see it and you're just kind of like, wow. And like that was the reaction that I had when I was like kind of looking at this as we prepare the content for this show, and see this dropped in there, and having, you're like, you're throwing in the maps and stuff. And I'm just like, that's a tough take. Like they were probably never going to achieve a result based on the pass map network and the shape that we kind of saw them in.
Yeah, and I should have pulled it up. I don't have the advanced box score in front of me, but I do think that like you look at, I mean, I do have at least the overall. I know that Chicago as a team, their pass accuracy was at 85% team wide.
Yeah, 72.
They had 62% possession. They strung together more than 500 passes, which I think might be the most passes they've completed.
I think that was the
3 years, and you looked at the individual percentages, which you get in the advanced box score, and just really high across the board. I think Vanessa DiBernardo overall might have connected like 90% of her.
I thought she had an outstanding game.
She was really fantastic.
And it was one of these moments, and we've talked about that. I was just like, gosh, like we're watching Vanessa DiBernardo play a ton of minutes this year in a position that she, quite frankly, has not been asked to play before for this team. And she has been having a fantastic season. Quite frankly, I'm not gonna front, man. I know you and I are part of the media association, and we get the opportunities to vote on stuff like month to month when it comes to players and things like that. And I'm like, this is another one of those seasons for me where it's eerily similar to what we were witnessing out of like Morgan Gautrat last year, where we just sort of felt like, hey, like not enough people are talking about how Morgan Gautrat is having like a career year for the Chicago Red Stars. And Vanessa DiBernardo has had multiple good seasons for the Chicago Red Stars, but there's something about this year and watching her play in a position that was asked of her, quite frankly, just out of necessity, and seeing her thrive and excel in it.
You know, I said on a different podcast this week, we were talking about MVP candidates and stuff like that. And the thing that I said, which is a weird thing to say, but I think is true, is like Mal Pugh is Chicago's MVP candidate, but Vanessa DiBernardo is Chicago's MVP.
100%.
And so it's like, both things are true. You know?
It's like, here's two true facts.
Yeah.
And the two like Chicago heads and you and I are gonna just be on our Chicago show and being like, here are the presented facts, and just accept them because quite often we're never wrong, dude. Quite frankly,
and I do. So Kristen was talking. She said it was great to see Cook get that goal in the second half, and I agree. I wanted to mention this as well because, and this is what I said in my piece this week. If you're a CHGO subscriber, you read all about it. The one thing, even out of this game, that I think they can work on positionally, and this is another consistent thing from the game before and the game before that, is figuring out where Cook needs to sit positionally. Because, and again, I want to be clear, like with the pass mapping, they're accumulated over 90 minutes. So it doesn't mean that a player is in one position all the time. It means that if they're on, we've seen it kind of break sometimes if a player's on the left and the right, then it looks like they're in the center, that sort of a thing. But consistently by the end of the game, Cook is frequently behind Pugh or behind the wing backs. And I need to go back probably and watch some tape to see exactly what's happening in the moment. But I wonder, she's there to be the forward most facing striker. She's there to be a central outlet. We know sometimes you're going to get redundancies depending on the opponent. If Pugh is like, no, this game I need to be a little bit more central because that's where the weaknesses are, stuff like that. But I do think that I think so highly of Cook on the ball and Cook sort of receiving the ball and the way she's able to turn that I would love to see those two get more time together to figure out how to best utilize each other. Because I think we saw that from like Lubert, BSG. I thought Yuki had probably her best game of the season. And so I want that for Cook as well. But the header, I mean, it was a great goal. And again, it just goes to show what she can do, right?
I think too, another thing, like I was just like, I love, again, the timing of these goals. Like Milazzo's coming in stoppage time at first half, and Pugh and Cook linking up kind of just past the hour mark, approaching the 70th minute. Like I think that was the other part of this game, right? It's like, okay, here's the first half, it concludes, like they get that breakthrough goal, they have the lead heading into the half, and I think in that second half, like there's still that part of my brain that's like, okay, so like get more,
right?
Like really, like put this team away. Like they're not presenting you with anything in terms of those type of attacking challenges that maybe people were anticipating to see from this Gotham side. It just has not been there this season for them. So like that's what I was looking for in this second half. I'm like, okay, so when are we going to see this scoreline kind of maybe not blow up, but balloon a little bit? You
want it to reflect the performance,
this
right?
This is the team where they had put up three up without an Ayer or a Pugh, kind of, or a BSG, in support of the roster and of the lineup. So I'm like, okay, the band's back together, going up against this same team that they just faced about a month ago. Balloon it up a little bit. So they did get this second goal, Pugh to Cook, which I think was also great for Pugh because this is a player integrating back in the team after this CONCACAF W championship and hasn't necessarily found herself on the scoreline quite yet for the team. So I think getting an assist is a nice way to do that, putting in the work and setting him up and quite frankly having the young rookie knock him down. And I'm with you. I think maybe that's what we're going to see in this second half of the season, not so much second half of this game, but we're going to start to see that a little bit. I think we're going to start to see players plugged in and maybe try to solidify those 11s in future games. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is so basic, but I think Pew wants to win. And if that is a function of playmaking and not, being the attacking focal point as much, I think, well, she is the attacking focal point no matter what, but just, I think that she'll be happy with the result no matter what. Obviously, strikers want to score. But this, I actually had that thought when watching. I was like, they pulled that last, what would have been 3 offside, and Pew was actually pretty disappointed to have that one pulled back because I think she really wanted one. But
and that's a good time to maybe, like, when you're talking about that, like, we could pull up the actual XG race plot.
Yeah, the XG
because we're seeing in the second half, like, how this kind of escalates, as it leads up to Ava Cook, and then building throughout the final 15 minutes or so of the game. So Joey, I don't know if you still have access to that. If you could pull up.
There we go. There it is.
Race plot. Thanks so much for that. So we see Ava Cook here in the 70th minute, and I mean, shout out to Ariel again, but the offside kind of goals aren't going to be.
No, they're not tallied. Yeah, so that would have been late. It probably
but we see here, sort of the rise to the 2 goals, and ultimately the 1.47 XG plot, for this one. And you just see Gotham there. It's like
rough stuff.
It just plateau. Yeah, it's like RIP. It's like RIP. Yeah. It's like absolutely, it's like flatline.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's just, this just was not, this is one of those games where it's just like, I'm happy that they got the win, because this was absolutely one of those games where we were like, yes, this is professional sports. So Team A, who is having a good season, should absolutely have this marked on their calendar and say, we're going to go out there and whoop Team B in the second half of the table.
Well, it's almost like it's only what they needed, right? That second goal, that dub. I think you can handle 2 losses in the NWSL. You really don't want to make it 3. You just don't.
Yeah.
But anyway, OWYN, pronounced OWIN, stands for Only What You Need. It's a 100% plant-based protein shake that gives you nutrition that works as hard as you do. All of their products are free of artificial ingredients, allergen-friendly, no gluten or dairy, easily digestible. And Owen and CHGO have partnered up to give you an awesome offer. You can get 20% off your first purchase at liveowen.com. That's LIVEOWYN.com with the code CHGO20. It's like the equivalent of a boost of a dub, right? Dub boost.
Yeah.
Same as
if you want to feel like a Red Stars winner, you basically just need to cop some Owen, quite frankly, and just get that feeling for yourself. Nothing like getting a dub before you have to trek off on a ridiculous road trip, quite frankly.
Can I ask one more Gotham question?
Yeah, of course.
So, because I think this is Chicago relevant. I do think this is Chicago relevant, which is so I mean, Scott Parkinson was
let's talk about it.
It was a mutual agreement. I think they and I think that's probably actually probably mostly true. I think that as you could see coming out of Gotham last week or yesterday, that Scott's a great guy. I think that the whole club was very open about that, but it just was not working on the field. Scott was obviously a Chicago Red Stars assistant coach for 2 years or a year and a half before taking the Gotham job. Did how that went surprise you?
I say it will surprise me in the sense of the timing of it. I think that I said this on I said it on Attacking Third. I said it for the CBS Sports podcast that I co-host. That I wasn't maybe shocked at that result, that conclusion,
right?
That the two parties were like, hey, turns out this hasn't worked,
not working. Yeah,
but I am a little bit surprised at the timing of it. I think that maybe there's a little bit of a jumping of the gun, perhaps, for lack of a better phrase, where perhaps maybe front office was taking a look at the season in front of them, and maybe there's a perception of the possibility of this team still going on an incredible run and making the playoffs.
Sure.
I'm not a front office person. And maybe that's for a very specific reason, but I don't make that move now because quite frankly, everything that team has shown does not show me that they are going to make an incredible run and make the playoffs.
I had that thought. I was like, I think that it was eventually something that probably was going to happen.
I'm with you in that maybe they would have reached that conclusion at the end of the season.
Right.
Thank you for your service. Let's figure out a way to move on.
Right.
Let's go. So the other part of that is maybe they want, because within the phrasing of it, right? You always look at the phrasing of the announcement. So within the announcement, saying that, hey, Gotham FC and Scott Parkinson have agreed to part ways effective immediately, right? But within that, they also said, hey, we're going to begin a methodical process of identifying and interviewing a talented and diverse pool of candidates to serve as head coach for the 2023 season.
Right.
And they're going to announce an interim head coach shortly. So I'm like, okay, a methodical process of identifying and interviewing, right? So I'm like, okay, well, maybe they just want to get that head start on right now.
You can't do that with the old guy still in charge, probably. Right?
So it's like maybe they want to do that now, and you can't maybe do that while someone is still acting as head coach.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, I mean, we know how NWSL off seasons go. They actually arrive quite quickly.
Yeah, they go by pretty fast.
We're talking about like the end of a season, and then a lot of teams get into off-season mode, so that we see a lot of departures, we see a lot of maybe roster turnover, different signings or coach terminations, and then looking ahead to like NWSL drafts. So like maybe Gotham is in the position where they're just like, okay, so maybe this isn't so much about going on a ridiculous run in 2022 to try to get one of the fifth or the sixth seed. Maybe this really is more about looking ahead to 2023.
Yeah.
And
that's a good point. There's like two different ways of looking at it, right?
Yeah,
it's like they're either packing it up or they're trying to make a
so I think we could sort of see like within the statements of this, you have the GM and the managing owner, both saying like very nice farewells to Parkinson also posting a very, very sincere kind of farewell to Gotham as well. And you saw like a ton of players.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Like, saying like, hey, like, thank you so much for everything you brought for the club. Like, and sometimes it really is just that. Sometimes it really just doesn't work out.
It also felt specifically like, obviously after the year that the league had last year, if you have a coach where it's not working on the field, but you still really like that coach, you go out of your way to be like, it's not that, to let people know, because that's important too, especially if you consider that person like a friend and a colleague. And it would be great to have Parkinson, elsewhere in the league, maybe going back to assistant coaching or whatever he wants to do next. But I was just curious. I was even just sort of curious, like when an assistant leaves, and we've seen this with coaching trees in the NWSL before. I've been on a learning curve myself, even of being like, that coach was a well-liked assistant coach, excited to see what they can do as a head coach, but you just don't know until you see it, right?
Yeah.
And every club is different too. There are extenuating circumstances to roles with every club, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And you know what? I think it, I'm gonna just, if it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, you got to call it a duck. And I think, like, honestly, I think the front office making this decision, they're also going to start getting answers in other areas as well.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, you're going to have to take a look at the personnel on your roster and say, okay, who's performing here and who's not performing? Because guess what? The head coach is gone.
Right.
So if you still continue to sort of have these lackluster performances or lack of enthusiasm or poor body language on the pitch, they're going to be looking at all that.
Mm-hmm.
Who is going to be here to compete for Gotham? So that kind of puts, I think, the spotlight on the players now, quite frankly.
Agreed. Yeah.
Because you can't look and say whatever the head coach is doing isn't working. The head coach is no longer there.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Fair. This is a loss that they're going to have to try to turn things around. And I'm always down for talking about former coaches of the Red Stars. The Red Stars, we talk a lot about the players who are saying, their farewells to Scott Parkinson. And, there were a number of Red Stars players who did similarly when he made his move from an assistant role in the Red Stars to a head coaching role there. So, it was all about reputation, quite frankly. Had that opportunity. So it was cool to see him get it. And I hope there are more for him across the league, quite frankly. So we'll see. But
anyway, sorry, tangent. I just was curious. I was like,
let's talk about it. It's NWSL news. We're covering NWSL. Let's chat about it. you know what, now that we're talking about it, it's like I kind of wish maybe we might have had the opportunity to talk about that a little bit, perhaps with Aaron Wright, because
right.
you know, we were able to have a little bit of pregame media with head coach Chris Petroselli and Aaron Wright prior to their next match against Angel City. And this is going to be the first match of a lengthy road trip for the Chicago Red Stars, and it's also going to be the first game for them against Angel City. So I like that we were able to chat with her a little bit about shifting in to that defensive back role. And I like that we were able to talk to them a little bit about, you know, going up against Angel City for the first time and sort of, you know, going on the road for a while.
Yeah, I mean, road trip, you're using you're using it correctly, and I've been using it all the time too, but just sort of as an explainer, like in NWSL, it's a bit of a misnomer. A road trip where they're going to leave and then come back and then leave and come back and then leave and come back and then leave and then come back, which is almost, it's not worse, but it's also not great. It's a lot of travel over the next 4 weeks. And we've seen that they've had a little bit of a lopsided schedule in that regard all year, right? They would be home for 6 straight games and then be gone for a month and then come back for another 4 and then be gone. So it's a different task. Again, scheduling oddity. They have not played Angel City yet. Weird in the middle of August to have that be true, but hey, here we are. And I don't really super know what to expect. I mean, we asked about that, and I think that, they said that you have to be really mindful of players' bodies. You maybe don't train as hard, um, on a week where you're traveling to the West Coast. Um, you try to stay in a positive mindset, knowing that you're going in, it's gonna be a big crowd. You want that to be an exciting opportunity. You try to present it as, this is 2 teams on the field, not just 1. This is the kind of game that you wanna play every week if you can. And then, yeah, I just thought what Aaron Wright had to say was interesting about, the processes that Chicago has been putting into place to just maintain that consistency. And it was also just, quite frankly, really nice. It's just nice to have veterans come back and be part of the playing part of the squad as well. And so it was just really nice to see her make her return from injury. So definitely going to be a different stretch, though. I think it's going to be really fascinating to see how they do. And I think that this is definitely the next step in playoff prep too, with hopefully they'll be in that position by the end of the season, but figuring out how to go win on the road, I think, is obviously key to making a deep playoff run. So I think that this is going to be, hopefully,
I think it's going to be a new challenge for them. Quite frankly, it's one I think that it's like the one thing that I think that they haven't
really done.
Or been presented with. We've seen things like a team that has, half of a roster that is incredibly young. Okay. And so they've checked that off their box. These are players who are competing and fitting into the system, thankfully, right? That doesn't often happen for a lot of young players in this league, let alone a roster with half of them that are incredibly young players, right? So there's that box that's kind of checked off. Playing without your star forward, they've got that box checked off. There are multiple games in 2022 that the Red Stars can look at and say, we actually did just fine without Malpew, and we were capable. Are they better with her? 100%. But were they also able to somewhat stay afloat in certain phases of that? Yes. So that was like something that they can check off. And then I don't think this is a new one. This is like, hey, can we have this sort of disruption, let's maybe call it, or this change up or this shake up to our schedule, and how will we fare in that? So like you said, it's like a road trip in NWSL is going to look and feel a little bit different than maybe other professional sports. And this is one where it's like they're going to the West, and then they're coming back, and then they're going to the East, and then they're coming back, and then they're going to like just sort of stay kind of centrally against Louisville, and then they're going to leave again and go all the way west to go face All-Rain. So there's a lot of different areas here in which there's going to be new challenges that are presented. So I'm excited and eager to see how they kind of come out over this next 4 weeks. And that was kind of my angle in asking Aaron right about that, because there's a part of Chicago's Red Stars culture, especially amongst the veterans of this team, that is known, that it's a known fact that they're a team that they understand where, the second half of the season, or the final third specifically of a season, is where it can really get kind of grindy and your focus, and it has to sort of shift into a little bit of a playoff-esque mentality while also not looking too far ahead. So this is something that, like, we've always seen them kind of navigate, right? If you're at this point 6, 7, 5-year kind of veteran of the team. But there's a lot of young players on this team who are going to be experiencing this for the first time. And on the other side of that coin, they're going on the road and they're playing teams that might present them with like a different level of urgency, quite frankly, because they are in different places in the table and they are in different places in their season. So where the Red Stars are like in the upper half and they're trying to just like take it week by week, there are teams that are going to come out and probably come run and gun for them. So it was really cool to sort of ask somebody like Aaron Wright about that and sort of the perspective of that, and where they're still keeping that, but they are making a small shift themselves, that she said, in understanding that there are going to be players who are probably going to be bringing it to us, depending on the type of team that we're going to play. And I am curious if that's going to be one of those first tests that we see in this Angel City side. So we're doing this live with all the good folks here joining us ahead of like availability reports, right? So not too sure, even on the Angel City side of things, who's necessarily going to be available in this match. I mean, technically, there's going to be a number of players who are kind of coming off of a short week themselves. They had an exhibition game against Tigres Femenil, where we got to see kind of more of the depth of their roster, see more time, but we still saw somebody like, Savannah McCaskill, who's typically been a starter for them, get out there and get minutes under her legs. So I'm wondering like who is and isn't going to be ready or available for this match against Chicago. I'm wondering if somebody like LaRue who has sort of been navigating some things and had some time off, is going to come back and running and gunning for Chicago. Because if there's somebody that we know likes to score against the Red Stars, it's Sydney LaRue.
Yeah. I think I don't know. We'll see if she's available. It should be fun. I mean, it's nice to watch something new. There's a couple teams that Chicago's played a lot this season so far, and this is going to be like literally the first game like ever against Angel City, which I think is going to be fun. Obviously you wish it was a full strength Angel City. You wish it was a full strength Chicago. You wish that this matchup had a little bit more of its heavy hitters in it. But I think it should. I think they'll have a good. I mean, they'll hopefully have a good time out there. I mean, the one final thing on the Aaron Wright availability is, this was just sort of formulating in my brain when you were talking, which is one of the really nice things for us as media to talk to some of the veterans, whether it's Vanessa Bernardo or Danny Colaprico or Aaron Wright or Alyssa Nair or hopefully some other vets when they come back, is they can say definitive statements about the team. And I think, like, for example, Aaron Wright said with a very definitive authority, she said, we always make it to the top 4 and we don't do it by looking at the table. And that's actually not something that their coach can do right now. Over time, hopefully he'll be able to speak with more definitive statements about the past and the present and then the future. But it's really nice to have players who, you don't see that a lot this year, because when you talk to the younger players, they're trying to talk about fitting into the culture, but it's really nice to talk to the culture setters, I guess, is maybe my whole point. But I do, we're talking. I want to get to the last ad break before we run out of time.
Something that they should also pack with them.
Something they should also pack with them on their big road trip is Athletic Greens. Athletic Greens. It is one delicious scoop of AG1, you are absorbing 75 high-quality vitamins, minerals, whole food source superfoods, probiotics, and adaptogens to help you start your day right. This special blend of ingredients supports your gut health, your nervous system, your immune system, your energy, recovery, focus, and aging. All of those things. It's lifestyle friendly. It contains less than 1 gram of sugar. It costs you less than $3 a day. Professional athletes use it. It has over 7,000 5-star ratings. People love to use it. You're going, if you're like the Red Stars, you're traveling, you're going to the airport, you're doing whatever. Athletic Greens.
Athletic Greens, baby.
Yeah.
Get that energy going. something. Who knows? It's probably very easy to pack as well too, which is
you would think, right? One scoop, just one scoop a day.
That's all you need. Put in a little Ziploc baggie and you're good to go. Big crowd at Bank of California Stadium. Hopefully the Red Stars feed off of that. I think Malpe plays pretty good in front of crowds, so I'm hopeful that she has a good game against Angel City. I'd also like to see another strong game from BSG. I think she's working her way back in, and I liked some of the moments that she had on the ball against Gotham. I want to see that translate against a team and in front of a crowd like Angel City. Who do you want to see ball out?
Yeah, I think if Chicago can control the wings, I think that will make a big difference. I think, you look at Angel City's strengths and their weaknesses, depending on who they have available, right? But I think that they've had to really slot some people in at outside back in ways that they would not prefer to do that. Obviously, I think Jasmine Spencer has been working her way back in with them. I would love to see her play just because I'm a big fan, but for Chicago, maybe they're hoping that she's on limited minutes. So yeah, I think if you want the wingbacks to be able to control play kind of the way that they did against Gotham. And then you just play through the midfield and force Angel City to try probably to do just long ball stuff and then just defend well in transition. And I think that's the ball game, really.
I want to see June Endo not have a good game.
Yeah, right. Chicago, keep someone use the dual sixes to keep someone like her off the ball. Use the dual sixes to keep someone like Savannah McCaskill off the ball. Just mess distribution up, and force their center backs into having to make risky passes in order to advance the ball. And then that's your bread and butter, I think. Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's see it. Let's hopefully we'll be back to talk about a Chicago Red Stars win. I mean, look, they got to win to send them off on a road trip. Would love to set in motion the next 4 weeks with another win. Let's go back to back, baby. Let's get a Red Stars dub. Hopefully we get some fun goals to talk about. Maybe they'll come off of set pieces again. We'll see. Maybe we'll get that Yuki goal.
I know Yuki's been getting better and better every week. I'm just waiting for it to all come together.
Well, one of these players who maybe gets stronger with time, like fine wine, so they say. So we'll see. We're looking forward to. Hopefully we get to talk about that next week as well. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. We just want to let you know if you enjoy hanging out with us, chatting all things Chicago Red Stars. Just want to remind you that one of the best ways to support us in CHGO Red Stars Podcast is with a CHGO membership. You can get access to all kinds of different podcasts around all kinds of Chicago teams, not just the Red Stars. So there's shows on every team every day. You could see some post-game shows. You get premium written content for members at allchgo.com. So when you sign up, you get access to all that incredible writing from my girl Claire. You also get access to merch for all the teams, a free t-shirt when you become a member. So sign up to get that CHGO Red Star shirt. And you also get access to the members only Discord, the CHGO Lounge. All right. So everybody sign up at www.allchgo.com. And Claire and I will be back next week to chat all things Chicago Red Stars. See ya.